mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans, by justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace. How great this country could be. Respecting your rights, respecting human rights. What a wonderful nation this could be. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities, no to unlawful detention and police brutalization, class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice with JFJ. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of the organization. I'll be flying solo today because my co-host Jade Williams is not here. But we're going to be having some exciting discussion for our listeners. And we're focusing on youth and civics and how we can improve democratic participation among our young people. And, you know, it's an election year. We're expecting the general elections to be called in a few months. And as we have discussed, it's important as a society that we stop treating politics as something that's dirty to shy away from, and to treat it as an avenue where our most fundamental rights will be realized, because the political mechanisms that exist through both the local and government and general elections are important for our young people to be aware of the power, the structure of our state, the authority of our state systems, where to go if our rights have been violated, listening to the PBC, paying attention to parliamentary committee meetings, understanding the structure of parliament and how it operates. How knowledgeable are our young people about these mechanisms, and what we're seeing in recent times with the decline in voter participation? Is it apathy, or is it a way of rebelling to say to the political actors, do better, serve us better so that we can better participate? So I just wanted us to focus a little bit more on that. And when we start, we're going to be joined by Deshaun Carter, who's a youth advocate with the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. And they actually have a survey that they have circulating on their social media platforms to assess some of these very things that we're going to be talking about. And we have a youngster in studio with us, Tamario Daniels, who was a youth policy committee member with Free Children, which is a local organization that was founded by a young person, Africa Stevenson. Stevens, yes. Yeah. My apologies to Africa. Brilliant young attorney, recently passed the bar last year, I believe it was. And we're also going to be joined by Mr. Uton Vassell, who's the project manager with Citizen Action for Free and Fair Elections, and the organization CAFE, who has been around for quite a bit. They are encouraging young people to sign up as election workers to observe proceedings. So we wanted to get a little bit from Mr. Vassell there, just generally about youth and civics, so we can bolster their participation and, of course, encourage young people to volunteer and be a part of the election process. So very exciting conversation. I'm no longer a youth. I passed that several years ago Tamara is laughing in studio at me. I don't know why, right?
Oi.
We don't laugh at older
No,
persons.
man. I'm just saying that you are a youth. You are young in spirit.
Young in spirit,
Young
because
in
I drop
spirit.
off the UN age bracket of what constitutes a youth.
No, man. You're young in spirit. Don't worry your head. Don't worry your head.
All right. And I will save towards the end of the program to just articulate on some things that jumped out at us last week, human rights issues, focusing on the concerns we have here at JFJ regarding the increasing incidence of rape, as reported by at least 2 police divisions. I recall I will speak to that, as well as some press releases coming out of Indicom last week with their concerns about the rising fatal shootings by members of the police force. So I will make some commentary on that towards the end of the program. But do we have our guest online? All right, before we get into that, let me do what Jade normally does and ensure I don't get in trouble with the JFJ team, who have done quite well in putting together the production of the show, Vanessa Parkinson, as usual, and Jade Williams. All right, so the trivia for today, and it's still credit because we haven't yet gotten the KFC vouchers that I promised, right? So in another week or so, we're going to be having those meal deal or big deal or some deal happening with KFC. As I said, you don't have to join a long line as KFC celebrates the 50th, but you can get a voucher from JFJ starting next week, and we will leave it with Nationwide if they so allow, or you come up to the office for it. All right, so the trivia question for today: which section of Jamaica's constitution guarantees the right to peaceful assembly and association? And we ask these questions each week for you to appreciate what is in the constitution, because we must know what is in the supreme law of our country. So that's a trivia question, and you can go on our YouTube platform at JFJ. You can answer right here on Nationwide's YouTube platform, or you can visit our social media pages to answer. So wherever you are so comfortable and listening in, you can answer. And of course, you can text in the response to our WhatsApp at 239. Vanessa, remind me. 7583. So 239-7583, and Vanessa will be there. All right. Okay. The did you know for today? You know, as I get older, the eyesight not so good, so I have to be zooming in on the phone. Tamara is going to be laughing at me since the entire show. All right. So Section 39 of the Constitution speaks to the eligibility for the Houses of Parliament. A person shall be qualified to be appointed as a senator or elected as a member of the House of Representatives if at the time of his appointment or nomination for election he or she A, is a Commonwealth citizen of the age of 21 years or upwards, and B, has been ordinarily resident in Jamaica for the immediate preceding 12 months. In other words, 12 months and more, must have been a resident or a Commonwealth citizen at the age of 21. So you realize, to be able to sit in the House of Parliament, there's nothing that speaks to qualification, just the age. And these are the things that I want us to think about for those who are listening in as we talk about the road to republic. When you hear these trivia and the did you know coming on for the show, what is driving our thought process in terms of what we need to change, right? Do we want to reduce the eligibility age from 21 to 18? Food for thought. Do we want to be able to vote directly for our senators? Another food for thought. What about the Commonwealth citizenship? We had a lot of discussion around that. Some of it within the context of the political arena, in terms of should an MP be just a Jamaican citizen, full stop, rather than extending it to the Commonwealth, which, you know, consists of several countries. What are the implications there? So food for thought with several of these things as we speak a little bit more. So we're going to be joined again by Mr. Vassell, Uton Vassell, who's the project manager of Citizen Action for Free and Fair Election, Tamaria Daniels, who is with me in studio, Youth Policy Committee member for Free with Children Foundation, and Dashawn Carter, Youth Advocate for Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. All right. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for joining.
Good afternoon.
All right, great.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you so much. You know, let me start with the youngsters. Dashawn, you're online. Let me start there. And we go to Tamario and then Mr. Vassell. Dashawn, from where you sit, as a youngster, what do you think is perhaps, well, let me ask you this first. Do you think there is voter apathy among young people wherein lack of interest, lack of knowledge, or is it a case where young people are just fed up and saying that we don't want to participate? What do you think is the issue?
Okay, so I definitely think that voter apathy exists, and it's not just a baseless claim, it's something that has been substantiated by studies and statistics, the trends that we've seen over the past few years. And so it's this understanding that young people aren't simply uninterested with the political happenings and what's going on within their government systems. It's simply that they are interested, but there are barriers, or there's been this sort of distrust with the formal governmental institutions within Jamaica. Now, this sort of distrust may be catalyzed perhaps by feelings of incompetency with the government, years and years of political neglect, the idea that the importance of youth in political discourse, in nation building, in policy making has been kind of denigrated, and we're feeling as if our voice isn't being heard and incorporated meaningfully in political discussions. And I think, interestingly, we're seeing that young people specifically are more so issue voters. And so if they feel as if their issues aren't being addressed or properly remedied by the government, unlike sometimes their older counterparts, they aren't just blindly loyal to a certain party. And so if their issues aren't being addressed, they tend to abstain from participating in voting and other political means of participation.
Thank you so much, Tamario. From where you sit, do you see that increase perhaps in participating in the political landscape, whether it be by actually registering, becoming enumerated, or voting? What are you seeing from where you sit?
From where I sit, I honestly believe, and I share some of the same sentiments as Mr. Carter. I believe that in terms of political involvement for young people, it is not where it needs to be overall. I know that there are different organizations that exist that do support us getting the information, right? However, I believe due to distrust, the general distrust, it is kind of pushing youth away from politics versus within the whole system. I think that people need to understand that when you are a young person, you have a civic duty to ensure that you advocate for whatever you believe is fit within the country. And I don't believe that young persons are kind of engaged in that process, which kind of results in the apathy.
Yeah. Mr. Vasso, we're going to take the break, and when we return, I want you to define what apathy means when we talk about the context of voting, voter apathy. What exactly do we mean by that? And if you can give us some perspective on behalf of CAFE.
When you want the food shell and make the rice well, just gimme me Kendall. When it's on KENDEL, gimme me Kendall.
Another quality product from the Carimed Group.
Just gimme me Kendall.
The time by Kendall Foods. The taste of quality is
1:16.
Start the school year healthy and ready. Bring the kids to the nationwide 90FM Back to School Fair for vision and dental checks, blood pressure and blood sugar tests, and even immunization support. It's peace of mind for parents and a confident start for students. Join Team Revolution on Saturday, August 9 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Harmony Beach Park, Montego Bay. Don't miss the nationwide 90FM Back to School Fair.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice here with the JFJ, and we're discussing the issue of youth civics and democratic participation. And we have online with us Dashawn Carter, Tamario Daniels, and Yutian Vassal from Cafe. Mr. Vassal, can you just explain to us what is voter apathy? And are you seeing elements of that when you engage youngsters on behalf of Cafe?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, in a sense, it's just apathy is just having an indifference towards the process. But I would say, though, there are two divergent patterns that have emerged amongst young Jamaicans regarding electoral trust and participation. One being the widespread of distrust, and the other being the emergence of engagement. So as it relates to widespread trust, many youth express their deep skepticism, sometimes disdain, towards the political process. And I believe this is stemming from a long-standing perception that politics is driven by self-interest and insincerity. I guess one would say this enchantment, contributes to the decline in voting or voter turnout. And then when we look on engagement in the contrary, involvement in cafes, election monitoring, exercising, and democratic clubs has sparked genuine curiosity and enthusiasm amongst teenagers. Getting an understanding of the electoral systems and governance. Whilst these 2 points are contradictory, I think it also provides an opportunity for strategy, where enthusiasm can indeed be harnessed to address apathy.
Yeah. And well, let me go to Dashawn, because you touched on something which I found interesting, that our youngsters, they're no longer participating in the process because you grew up in a PNP family or a JLP family. From where you sit, you're articulating that youngsters now are issue-based voters. So what are some, if you can expound on that and perhaps articulate for us, what are some of the issues that you hear young people saying, these are the things that matter to me most, that I would want my elected officials to represent or better support?
Okay, so I'm glad that you asked, because interestingly, Jayan is currently administering a survey on voter apathy and political participation. And the overall aim of the study is to kind of see or to assess the factors causing this sort of disengagement with Jamaica's political happenings, especially in light of the upcoming election. And so that question is one that was asked within the survey, what are some of the issues that you think are commonly not addressed by, political leaders, some of the youth issues? And interestingly, you see issues like cost of living. You see issues like mental health. You see issues like corruption and sort of this perception of waste, abuse, and fraud within the government. You see issues like violence against youth. So issues that oftentimes affect young persons, issues that affect our ability to live peacefully within our society, or ability to engage meaningfully in work, engage meaningfully in school. These are issues which are affecting us every single day, but unfortunately, we feel as if our policymakers and our political leaders aren't making enough strides towards correcting these issues, irrespective of their continuous promises throughout the past elections, past election cycles.
Tamario, Dashawn mentioned something, the issue of engagement. Outside of the agencies that you both are a part of, Jayan, For With Children, do you see sufficient political engagement from the political parties, whether it be the 2 main political parties or what we would call third political parties in Jamaica? Is there sufficient engagement from where you sit, not to drive election outcome. So take out 2025 now. But before that, do you see sufficient engagement wherein what their policies are, what they want to promote, how they're listening in terms of what the issues are that you believe is in your best interest? Do you see that?
I believe that there are strides that are made within each individualized party. There is a structure, and there is a youth structure when it comes to youth and political engagement. However, the problem is you will be a part of these bodies and you will advocate and you will say, hey, this is what we're for. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to mentor you so that you understand exactly where we're at and we can try and find some form of resolution, some form of meeting ground. But again, due to the mistrust and the generalized stigma that is attached to the political era, you'll find that persons will stray away or not even try to join because they have this mental conception that political involvement is for self-gain, right? So there are strides that are made. There are different organizations underneath both parties, may I add, that do provide that support. However, in terms of getting persons engaged in that process, that is where we're having the issue.
And may I say that I know the Jamaica Labour Party, their youth organization, hosted an event, I believe, in West Kingston several weeks ago. And just yesterday, I saw something online where the PNP's youth organization hosted an event, and I saw even a baby. When I say baby, a child perhaps about 8 years old in the audience. And I know UIC and NDM, they also have a youth focused group. To you, Mr. Vassell, one of the things we've talked about as a society is a lack of civic awareness. Let us go there. How can we as a society improve that? And I take note that former Minister of Education, Favour Williams, she had mentioned that there would be some civics in school, but having touched base with several educators across both primary and high school, I'm not sure it has been achieved to what was announced or what was intended. So from where you sit, Mr. Vassell, how are we with civic awareness in our society?
Well, we at Cafe, one of the things that we try to, really get the youngsters involved in changing the narrative that exists about the political process is youth involvement in electoral monitoring, which offers a glimpse in both the strengths and the flaws of the electoral process. Well, in essence, whilst some perceptions are improved through participation, exposure to on-the-ground challenges can reinforce skepticism, and some positive reinforcement will be required. So the motivation hinges on receiving respectful, welcoming treatment from electoral authorities and party representatives, building trust, demand that their efforts are recognized and meaningful and impactful. So, once we change the narrative, a lot of our youngsters are of the view that, you grew up with a particular political party and it's do or die. But what we've realized is that mindset has somewhat shifted. People are now more focused on the real things, the real issues, and, really looking at the platforms that these MPs are coming with. So, and our mandate really at Cafe is, to get the involvement so that people are understanding of the processes and the governance surrounding the electoral process. And I think one of the things that really need to enforce it, and what we're trying to do here at Cafe as well, is also get the democracy clubs in schools the involvement as many schools as possible. And I think this is where reintroducing the formal subject of civics in schools, I think it would also bring that, that identity to civil duty that we should have as a nation. And I just really change that mindset of people, from oh, you get a little something, so you're going to vote. What we also realize that many of the youngsters have now registered to vote and are, anticipating the upcoming general elections and, participating in same. So we are very much enthused about that, and we're happy about this shift in our youngsters.
Thank you so much. Deshaun, when we talk about political participation, a lot of people tend to focus on the act of voting, which is the most common. How else can youngsters participate in the democratic and political process?
So, as you said, traditionally, when we think of political participation, we think of voting as, the ultimate form of exercising our political enfranchisement. But I think now, interestingly, I think within young people, they're shifting to other avenues of participating in our country's politics. Interestingly, over, I think, the last last local election, I had actually participated in CAFE's monitoring program. And a lot of my other schoolmates participated in this program, but not many of them voted. And so it's important that when we're assessing apathy and the rate at which youths are participating in our political processes, we not only focus on voting, but we focus on other forms of participation, like, say, for example, joining an organization like CAFE that seeks to engage youth in the political process beyond just mere voting. You also have other methods, such as participating or being a part of a youth organization for a specific party. Earlier, you would have mentioned the PNPYO having a rally or a meeting earlier this week. And you also have the young generation hosting rallies, etc. And there are many other ways, including just being a part of discourse. As you know, young people, we love to use social media. We love to make our voices heard on social media because it's one of the most accessible platforms for us. And so just us going on social media, whenever we see an issue, voicing our concerns and engaging in political discourse on that platform, that's another form of participation. And of course, I believe participation in our local communities, participation by engaging with our MPs, engaging with other persons within our community that are politically active, having discussions with or family members or community members and all those who are involved within the policy process. And lastly, I think just engaging with organizations or maybe civil society organizations that try to bridge the gap between young people and policymakers. So say, for example, JN recently had a youth stakeholder dialogue where we sought to create a space within where youth can sit down and have a conversation with their policymakers and their political leaders and engage them one-on-one on the issues that affect them most. And typically, young persons might not have the opportunity to have this sort of discussion with political leaders. So there are definitely many different avenues and different ways in which young people can participate in politics beyond just merely voting.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to ask all three of you just to stay with us for a few more minutes, but we have to take the break.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
31 degrees Celsius here in Kingston, as well as out west in Montego Bay.
Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the calico jack. Cups up, make a party. Rum punch, send him my way. What you know? Fruit punch mixed with the rum. Link on my friend, them know. Hey, sipping on a vibe, yeah, we happy. Calico jack and then we started. Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the calico jack. Cups up, make a party. Rum punch, send him my way.
back to school doesn't have to break the bank. Swap instead of shop. Join Nationwide 90 FM at our back to school fair on Saturday, August 9 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Harmony Beach Park in the western city of Montego Bay. Bring those books your kids no longer need and swap them for ones they do. Plus, enjoy fun activities, entertainment, and meet your favorite nationwide personalities. It's all happening in St. James on Saturday, August 9 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Harmony Beach Park. See you there.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. And very, very important discussion being had. And Tamario, from where you sit, just to pick up on some important points, I've had the opportunity to speak at several secondary institutions. So has the team here at JFJ. And I tell you, the brilliance that both you and Dashawn are demonstrating, I've seen it across different institutions. Once you engage children within formal settings, children who are passionate about human rights, saying that they founded this organization as Africa did, for example. But there seems to be some disconnect with out of school youth, where sometimes that level of awareness and consciousness socially isn't necessarily there. And I understand all the different contexts. But as we think about civics and improving civics and rights and responsibilities among the nation's youth, what can be done to increase it, to improve it, perhaps both formally and informally? What say you?
Okay, I think that people need to understand the fundamental concept of what civics is. Mm-hmm. Civics is how we function within the country and how we're given a voice to do so. I speak as an educator in the field. You don't necessarily need to be very much political. However, there are systems that are put in place to ensure that civics is taken care of. For example, democratic rules in the classroom, being able to pick, choose, and refuse, being able to make collective decisions. Those are strategies that are put in place to ensure that civics is done. So I think emphasizing that the soft skills of civics is actually being done in your everyday life. I feel like if we can get to that place of equilibrium where we understand that civics is not just the political thought, but how we go about life, it will be better able for us to nuance the conversation to say, as adults, as persons who are in the outer formalized institutions, that this is how you can be involved, continuing the process. And one of the process is through political education, right? So I believe that if we can just strengthen that core concept that, hey, civics is actually something that we institute each and every day.
Even just being a part of a key club, that's a social responsibility.
Exactly. Just being a part of a youth club. One thing I will appreciate is that I am a member of youth clubs right across the country, and just being available in that type of situation will provide, the outlet where young people would need to actually hear what is going on in the system and also advocate on what they believe is right. So definitely I believe that civics needs to be introduced with that concept in mind.
Thank you so much. Before I move back to Mr. Vassell, what can parents do differently to educate our children about the importance of civics and participating in the process? And I don't mean drumming PNP and GLP in their heads, but what can they do differently just to, again, raise social consciousness and democratic participation?
Just letting them know that they have a role to play. I believe that a lot of youngsters in the home were not necessarily, looked at in the sense of, okay, we are going to be future leaders, right? And so when we're in the home, when you're talking with your child, explain to your child that, hey, if you were supposed to be prime minister one day, what would you do? Have those thought-provoking conversations, stimulate that type of social growth. Having that conversation, having that dialogue from early so that they will be better able to express how they feel when they get to, the adulthood stage where you're going to have to either swipe yes or no or X, Y, Z. It will be really beneficial for young people that are on their board.
Yes.
So definitely parents need to be more encouraging where that is concerned.
Yes. And growing up at one point, Granny Betty, who's my grandmother, and Mama, my grandaunt, there's no way primetime news could be going on and I'm there gallivanting.
Definitely watch
I must
the
be
news.
there watching the news with them because I get too little strike from Granny Betty, right? So even just watching the news and being informed is something. Not striking the children, by the way, we don't support corporal punishment here at JFJ.
Just
yeah.
facilitating that conversation.
Yes.
Right, and having those platforms, showing them the news, let them read the newspaper to you, hear their perspective. All of those things will help.
Yes. All right, thank you. Mr. Vassal, I know you are advertising at Cafe the volunteer sign-up for the election monitoring exercise. Can you just speak to that for the listeners and where to go for that sign-up process?
Right. So we are currently recruiting volunteers for the upcoming general elections, and you can reach out to us by our social media platforms, Cafe JA. And to apply, it's just to go on our website, which is Cafe Jamaica /apply.
Can you speak to the importance of the election monitoring? So just so people can really understand and go and sign up, whether you're speaking to youngsters who may be listening into the show or their parents.
I mean, it's more than just, viewing either parties. It's about understanding the process, observing it so that the elections are free and fair and free from fear. And I think that's our mandate here at CAFE to ensure that all Jamaicans understand the process, understand their rights. And just to go back to the point of getting, civics back in school, which I think is critical. The cafes, democratic clubs in schools, what we foster is civic literacy and democratic engagement. And this is done both locally and globally. And I think it's so important because it also explores our students to global electoral systems, like engaging in debates on topics such as mandatory voting and fixed election dates. And, I think it's so important as we anticipate the return of civics as a formal school subject. I think this will definitely reinforce this initiative and, really embedding democratic values from their early development. And I think this is also critical for me to say that democracy begins with trust. So let's help build it one student at a time.
Yes, I like that. I may borrow it, but I will give you credit. Dashawn, Jan, you're doing a survey. Can you speak? You mentioned it earlier, but can you speak to it? Is the survey still open? Where can people go and sign up if that is participate rather, if that survey is still open?
So yes, the survey is still open, and you can access it on our Instagram page. That's Youth Advocate JA on IG, and also on our website and many of our other platforms. And essentially, it's about trying to understand the factors, influencing young people to, say, for example, be apathetic towards political participation, and trying to sort of gauge their interests, gauge what are the factors that they think are being neglected within political discourse, especially in light of the upcoming the big upcoming elections, rather. And it's just to ensure that our advocacy and our engagement with young people around civic engagement is driven by statistics and data and can be as targeted and as informed as possible. But if I may, I'd also like to address another project that Jian is working on, which I think speaks specifically to civic engagement.
Yes.
The Youth Voices project, which is being funded by EU and Jamaicans for Justice, funded and supported. And it's essentially about demystifying the concept of human rights and ensuring that we engender within youths this idea that there's a connection between human rights and civic engagement, and ensuring that they're aware of the different channels, the different methods in which they can seek redress for any abuses against their human rights, and just ensuring that they understand that as young people, they have just as much as a say, just as much as a voice in nation building, in political participation, and within the civics of their society.
I have a question before the two youngsters go, before we end the program. Let me start with you, Dashan, and then we close out with Mario. I don't remember which country I read recently is looking at reducing the voting age from 18 years to 16. What say you in Jamaica? Starting with Dashan.
So reducing the voting age to 18 to 16, I mean, just by virtue of the fact that it's increasing sort of the electorate size, you will definitely see some increase in voter turnout within youth. But I think more than just increasing electorate size or eligibility to vote, we need to address the true underlying issues. And so it takes more than just putting on a Band-Aid or just like a surface level policy mechanism. What we need to ensure that youth are actively participating and not being apathetic towards the political processes is to ensure that our political processes are appetizing or incentivizing them to engage, to ensure that our politicians are actually listening to their concerns, listening to the issues that they have, and are actually taking proactive steps to ensure that these issues are, solved within society, and to sort of solve the issue of disillusionment. Help young people to understand that they do have a say and they do have a stake in nation building, and it's not just about getting their vote, it's about ensuring that they're represented at all stages of political discussions and political processes within our country.
Thank you. Tamario, should we decrease the voting age from 18 to 16 or think about it?
I definitely think it's something worth thinking about, but before we even get to that, I believe that there's a lot of work that needs to be done overall to ensure that we gain the trust of young people in that demographic. Again, we can't take that type of step unless we're sure that young people are actively and civically engaged in all of the processes of the political system. I think what we need to do is to try and hear from them themselves. Again, this is a change that would impact how they function. And so a lot of groundwork has to be done in terms of civic education, and that is where I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vasta, I don't want to discriminate because I think you and I may be in the same older category, but I'm not sure if you have an opinion that you would like to share.
Very much in the young category, but I would say.
Oh, okay. All right. I will stay in the older category by myself. That's fine.
I think the narrative really needs to change, and it's just more about. Not just about engagement, it's about making their experience count. I think we have to be very intentional about creating this shift in the culture if we really want to actualize this sort of change in our democratic process.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate the discussion. That's Uton Vassal, Project Manager for Citizen Action for Free and Fair Election, Tamaria Daniels, Youth Policy Committee Member for Free Children Foundation, and Dashawn Carter, Youth Advocate with Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. Really appreciate you always. Have a good day.
Same to you.
I will take the break, and then we will have some opinion being shared on some human rights issues that emerged last week.
Are you looking to drive sales and build brand visibility this summer? Be a vendor at the nationwide 90 FM Back to School Fair on Saturday, August 9 at Harmony Beach Park, Montego Bay. Families from St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, Trelawney, and St. Elizabeth will be out in full force. And you should be too. Call us at 876-630-1210. or email sales@nationwidenewsnetwork.com to secure your spot. Let's put your brand where it matters, on the ground. Tune in to Nationwide at 5 from 6 to 8 p.m. for a town hall meeting on July 24 at the Mona School of Business Executive Lecture Theatre at the University of the West Indies, Mona. It's time for a first world, peaceful and wealthy Jamaica. No more empty promises. Join visionary Andrew Donahue and host George Davis and hear the unveiling of a bold path forward. New governance, a people-owned economy, a social credit system to fight crime, and first world cities in 7 years. Join us as we celebrate a first world, peaceful and wealthy Jamaica on Thursday, July 24 from 6 to 8 p.m. It's a town hall meeting at the Mona School of Business Executive Lecture Theatre at the University of the West Indies, Mona. Catch the live stream on Nationwide's YouTube channel at Nationwide 90 FM Live 2. All this and more only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the KRV Group. This isn't politics, it's nation building. The new Jamaica vision begins now.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We just had a discussion with Cafe and two young representatives from Fairy Children Foundation and Jayan about how we can improve the level of civic awareness among our youngsters and strengthen the democratic participation. And it's important. And as I stated at the beginning, that we need to change discourse and our attitude wherein we see politics as this partisan matter that should be shied away from or scorned, wherein somehow, only certain people vote. A good friend and colleague of mine, Javian Nelson, he posted something on X as to why there is a higher turnout among low-income earners. And the responses were somehow classist. It was just alarming because I think we have to get to the stage wherein we all jump up. You know, I when an election is called, I'm most excited personally. I wake up, I tell, friends and colleagues, nobody knows who I vote for, by the way, in my family or close friendship group. It's a secret ballot voting by constitution for a reason. But I get so excited to post my purple ink finger. It's on my status. It's on my social media pages. And the moment we start thinking that it's just a certain type of people that vote because they want to eat a food, we're doing a disservice to the democratic process in our country. And I think we need to educate our youngsters about the importance of voting, of participating politically, engaging your members of parliament, understanding the process, understanding the structure of the state, so that we can get better governance. We don't want a minority government by default. So I think we have to be looking at these things. And again, it's always beautiful to hear from young people when they articulate as well as you heard them on the radio show. And I will forever talk about my experience in Manchester last year, where, I engaged a youngster. I need to reach out to her when they talk about, one of the youngsters who I spoke with. There was, Miss Jackson, I'm struggling. Should I do a law degree or a medical degree because I want to be involved in human rights? And it was just beautiful to listen and hear about children as young as those in first formers speaking about the democratic process and how involved they were. So let's move away from the negative narrative and this partisan approach and see how we can strengthen the process and the participation rather among our youngsters a little bit more by educating them and move away from that partisan politics as we have seen some of us growing up. Some of us more than others. When I listen to the horror stories of the past from, those in my family and so on. One thing that is on my mind last week, we heard from, there was an alarming case which resulted in a parent, let me call, and I use that word loosely, being convicted of rape, grievous sexual assault, trafficking of his child to adults, boys within the child's school. And we saw the sentence that was imposed to be served concurrently. And while the organization is certainly not in support of excessive mandatory minimum, because I don't want to be misunderstood, we have called for, when we made our recommendation to the Joint Select Committee reviewing the Offences Against the Persons Act, the 3 pieces of legislation speaking to mandatory minimum, that we should have established perhaps a sentencing commission that would look at some of the how sentences are imposed, and perhaps it's time for us to look at how we utilize consecutive versus concurrent sentencing in our country. I think it's important. So that's one thing for us to look at. The other concern from last week, we heard from 2 police divisions, I believe, indicating that the incidence of rape, they're seeing an increase. I believe Area 5 indicated some 93% increase compared to the corresponding period of last year. And when we look at our own research and engagement when we go in communities, and from what I know, even working within the HIV sector in the past, most of the rape incidents that occur, it's within the family and a close family member. And I think we have to look within, do some introspection on how we view rape and domestic violence, by extension, in our country. Because far too many family members are aware of somebody in their family who just not too right. And we keep silent, especially when financial implications are involved. And I tell you, JFJ, we have done research, we have engaged the community, and the attitude that we have where we label the girl child as bad, or she run away with some man, we need to look within, and we need to utilize the 211 number a little bit more, where it is okay to inform when you see something of concern. Because again, far too many of us are complacent within the family setting. And I listened to DPP Paula Llewellyn several times, and I believe she was on Nationwide last week, and she spoke on the same issue. Close relative, the neighbor who has been accused in several of these rape incidents that happen in our country. So I think we need to do a little bit more public education and encourage those of us, well, not me say us, because I will inform gladly if I know of any such incident, but people who are aware of a family member who have done something that they should not have done, we need to report more, look out for signs where children may be distraught, distressed, and ensure that our children are aware of some of the signs of, it's not the stranger danger anymore or by itself. It needs to be a little bit more comprehensive. Or we teach our children about, matters of rape and being careful and so on. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly, 3 press releases were issued by Indicom last week. And we saw Indicom indicating that they have charged 2 officers in relation to 2024 shooting incident. And I believe another release spoke to another officer charged in relation to a 2020 fatal shooting incident following Indicom's investigation. And that is welcome news coming from the agency, wherein since 2024, they said that 10 law enforcement officers have been charged in relation to fatal shooting incidents. And the press release speaks to other charges that were laid against other officers for non-fatal incidents or some abuse. And that's welcome that Indicom is making some strides. But Indicom also issued a press release speaking to their concerns about the increasing number, rising police shootings, and the improperly prioritized use of available body-worn cameras. And I want to publicly say that we support Indicom's release because it also supports some concerns that JFJ has raised, which we got a lot of public backlash against, but we continue to stick to our mandate and why we're here. Because when you look at the numbers, 177 persons have been shot and killed by the security forces as at some date there in July. And I want to put in context that at the end of 2024, 189 people were killed. So in July, if we're at 177, as I had warned, earlier in the year, we may very well exceed 300 people killed by the security forces if this trend is to hold. And what is even more concerning, at every press release by Indicom, there is a particular line. In none of these incidents were body-worn cameras used. In every press release where there is a fatal shooting, that is the standard line. No body-worn cameras. And Indicom says something in their release, and I have to close out quickly, where they say that based on these particular incidents, the police accounts illustrate that the officers are entering premises and are not faced, as asserted, with challenges of a rugged terrain or major tactical impediments which would hinder the use of current and available body-worn cameras. So food for thought as I close out. The winner for this week's trivia, and it's in the Constitution, where you can find your right to assembly and association. That's section 13 of your Constitution. And Annie Smith sent in the correct answer. But Annie Smith, I believe you're overseas, so you can text in someone that you would want to transfer the winnings to. All right, so that's Let's Start Justice with Jamaicans for Justice. Thank you so much, Michael Jackson. Have a good day.
Jamaicans for justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica the law. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Jamaica, make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
Jamaica's poverty rate has dropped from 16.7% to 8.2% as the government's economic growth